What's going on, Lycans? For episode 2 in our Solo Emissary series, which really should have been episode 1, we're going to go over some Solo Sloop general tips and tricks. This guide's going to range from some beginner to some more advanced areas, mostly focusing on how to survive fights with other players, with a few PvE type tips as well. Later guides will cover earning golden rep, so for now let's just jump into some tips for soloing. Tip 1 is to have some realistic expectations. Solo slooping is the equivalent of turning on hard mode in other games. This series I'm going to show you the easiest things to do within this hard mode, but soloing does take a lot of practice and a lot of trial and error. You will sink, you will get frustrated, stick with it. Beating bigger teams as a solo is one of the most rewarding feelings in the game, in my opinion. Tip 2 is getting used to how long it takes for your ship to actually sink. So with a level 1 hole below deck, it will take you about 2 minutes to fill up. There are a few other factors that influence this, but roughly 2 minutes. 2 level 1 holes will half that time to around a minute. 1 level 3 hole will take roughly a minute. Use your judgment on this to know when to start fixing your ship. Sloops are really easy to bilge, so a lot of the time it's safer to just bucket the water out of your ship, get out of range, and then start repairing. Tip 3 is to do things that require you to leave the ship for as little time as possible. This is the main purpose of this series. I'm going to cover a bunch of stuff you can do safely. The majority of the time soloing goes wrong is when someone sneaks up on you while you're off digging up treasure or locked inside a gold vault. If you do need to leave the ship, scout the horizon from your crow's nest. If it's empty, leave the ship for 3 to 4 minutes at a time and then come back and check again. This way hopefully you'll have enough time to prepare for a fight if you need to. You always want to decide how the engagement starts, and this will help with that. Tip 4 is making them think you're not solo. So most players know a good duo sloop is really powerful. Really good idea is to sail like you're in a duo and you're not solo. If you encounter a fight, grab yourself a pet, fire it out every now and then. Makes exactly the same sound as if you were firing a person. We usually make at least one of them stop and look for a border. Keep this up until they figure out that you're trolling them. Tip 5 is to practice what we call the circle of death. So this is your go-to win fights on a sloop or any ship with any crew size really. What this requires is disabling the ship's movement with chains or cursed cannonballs, then keeping your ship in a wider circle around the enemy and pelting them with cannonballs. With a crew, this is easier as one person can correct the wheel and manage sails. As a solo, we need to get used to our ship enough that we can put the ship in the right kind of spin so that we can focus on cannon shots. Generally, the closer you are to the target, the more you need to keep your sails up and the more you need to turn the wheel. What I advise is to head to a sea post or a shipwreck, as these are quite small. Start to put your ship in a spin around it at different distances and start to learn how far to turn the wheel and how high to have the sails to hit that sweet spot. Like anything, the more you do it, the better it will get. A really good tactic is to fire a round of cannons initially. On the second volley, fire 2 cannons, then load a blunderbomb in, rinse and repeat. It's a great way of stopping any holes that are being patched and messing with the enemy's movement. Tip number 6 is to play the slow game. In an ideal world, if you get in a fight, you'll knock down their mast, circle of death, and done. When this inevitably doesn't work half the time, don't rush and overcommit. Work on your ship's movement and position and find out what strategy is going to work for this fight. The main thing to avoid is a broad-to-broad fight with anything bigger than a sloop. There's a good chance you'll get knocked off or die when you inevitably have to run to the wheel, which is a good way to get sunk. Play slower, take pot shots to be irritating, keep pressure on, but don't overcommit. Tip 7 is about stopping borders, so there's a few good tips for this. Last thing you want is a guy diving around your ship. First thing, balance out your audio so that the effects volume is at least 40 points higher than everything else. Set it like this so you can hear swimming and mermaids spawning before the guy's actually on your ship. Keep your ears open. If you hear someone fire themselves out of a cannon, you can alter your ship's direction and hope they miss. Keep an eye on the water to get an idea of the side they're coming from. So one thing you could do is try and blunderbuss them as they climb up. But a good boarder can drop from the ladder and recatch it, getting back on while you're reloading. Throwing blunderbombs from the canopy is a really good strat. Just do as much damage as possible while they're actually on the ladder. If they do happen to get on, do your best to kill them as quickly as possible. If your anchor gets dropped, don't stop fighting to try and catch it unless you manage to kill them before it drops fully. Just let it drop. A prime strategy I use myself on sloops is to drop the anchor, jump to mid-deck and sword lunge back up the stairs. 9 times out of 10, someone will have grabbed the anchor and you can slam right into them. If they get you, don't panic. We'll talk about that in the next tip. So tip 8, we're going to talk about breaking a spawn camp. I never managed to actually get much footage of this. If it has gotten this far, it's usually game over. It's difficult to kill one person on your ship that has the advantage of waiting for you to spawn, let alone a team if more of them come over. What I like to do, as I'm black screening in, I like to hold a direction and spam jump. Hopefully you'll start moving before your character even appears. Try and get rid of one person, launch blunder bombs, get rid of one, and then hopefully it's a fair fight to get them off your ship. As a last ditch attempt, you can try and board their ship if you can just dive straight off your ship. Hopefully it will make them leave your ship to come and get you. But as I've said, you're usually done if it gets to this point. But I have gotten lucky in the past and clutched them. Try your best, and if you do sink, reflect on how you can stop them getting on board next time. Tip 9 is knowing when you should board. So I love boarding. It's a pretty key step in my usual strategy when I'm playing with a crew. Knowing when to do it solo is tricky as your ship becomes completely unmanned and unprotected. This is where some advanced knowledge of how your ship moves and what it's capable of comes in handy. Be confident in your skills so that even if your ship takes a knock or beaches itself, it's not the end of the world. I like to only board if I manage to get a ship into a circle of death and get a few cannons off it, so Tugger will just rotate himself around the ship. I'll normally try and do a volley or two and then dash over or shoot over while the ship continues to circle them. Wouldn't bother boarding unless you've put some holes in them first. It can be done, but it's easier to sink them while they have holes. Lastly, and a short tip, is to grab a rowboat whenever you see one. Sometimes you will lose your ship. A hilarious example is loading your loot onto a rowboat and have someone chase your empty ship while you row off and sell. Be careful though, as this is really predictable. If I'm chasing someone and they go anywhere near an outpost, I'll always shoot over to check if they've taken a rowboat of loot over there. And that's it guys for today. Let me know if you've got any more solo tips. You can put them down in the comments below. If you enjoy my content and want to see more Sea of Thieves tips and guides, please hit that subscribe button, hit the bell to get notified when I upload. And as always, take it easy, stay safe, and we'll see you on the seas.